Hi, this is Andrew Bastler, and I'm doing my Geography 313 project on climate change effects on Pacific Inland Northwest dryland wheat farming, as you first can see in my first slide there. The question I just wanted to know as a local Muscovite growing up in the beautiful Palouse, I wanted to know how these fields would respond to increased temperature and atmospheric CO2, variability in precipitation. This is dryland farming. They don't irrigate, so it's important. And I didn't know what was going on. So um, how is this going to be impacted? And this includes crop yield, maybe changing crops, crop selection, crop rotation techniques. Is that going to change? And ultimately, how I boiled it down was, will Palouse agricultural land look significantly different in 50 years? So let's go. Why? Well, dryland wheat farming is a main ag crop in the Palouse area. Clearly, it's an economic engine, according to USDA. Idaho and Washington sales $1.8 billion annually with wheat. It's just a huge part of the area. And like I mentioned, I'm a Moscow native. I didn't really know anything about wheat farming. Don't have a farming family, but I just wanted to know more about it, and I figured it'd be a good opportunity to check it out. So the methods, I looked at four basic modeling research projects using different emission scenarios and global climate models, or general circulation models, sorry. Like I mentioned earlier, impact on crop yields, selection, rotation on a macro level. So looking big picture, how is this going to impact the yield, selection, rotation? On a micro level, these documents also looked at the individual plants themselves. TUP, transpiration use efficiency, evapotranspiration on like a smaller scale, how it affects each individual wheat stalk, I guess, you know. So there's kind of two approaches to this, and we're going to cover both of them. So the first thing I learned was that increases in atmospheric CO2 levels and temperature will increase winter wheat and spring wheat yields. Winter wheat planted for the snow, it's a higher yielding wheat, and then they plant after that spring wheat, which is a lesser yielding wheat. So the gains are dependent on location, temperature, variation, and rotation schedule. So as you can see here, this map is kind of a picture of the Northwest near Spokane. So I know it's hard to really see, but this is a future RCP 8.5 emissions scenario. And spaced out here, you can kind of see, some growth in some areas, but in the blue, that's a lot of yield growth. And this is looking at crop fallow transition, crop fallow, or different crop rotation schedules and how it impacts that. Certain areas go continuous planting and they don't let fields stay fallow. Some rotate. That all depends. So this is the first one that's showing kind of gains across the board. And this is a 2070 picture. So 2070, that's 50 years down the road. Another slide looks at winter wheat biomass and yield growth, two different RCP scenarios, so a lesser 4.5 and then the higher emission scenario 8.5. These are 7 local agroecological zones. So if we can see Pullman, Cambridge, Lind, Moses Lake, St. John. But if we look at the years going forward, 2000, 2080 at the end, we can see biomass gains across the board, especially in these drier areas. You'll notice in the drier areas, the gains will be increased. The gains will be just much larger, faster in the drier areas. So 4.5 on the left, 8.5 scenarios on the right. Higher gains with the higher emission scenarios, more carbon produced, more carbon for those wheat plants to soak it up. Here's another one that depicts the micro scale of this. Examples of crop yield increase, spring wheat, transportation use efficiency. So how the plants process the carbon, increasing their biomass. So if we look across the board here, here's those two other goofy maps on the left here. But if you look, gains, the yellow, orange, 4.5. And then on the right here, we see zonal trends. So as we'd expect with the higher 8.5 scenario, we see higher biomass going up, rising as we go. And then as we tail off, as we notice in a lot of these models, you'll see 2070, 2080, these things are starting to decrease, and I don't know if that's just from too much carbon. They're just I don't know what the deal is, but it starts to go down after that, so they have to keep an eye on that. Here's a really good chart showing how the crop rotation affects on this. So we have three agroecological zones: CC, continuous cropping; CCF, crop fallow transition; CF, crop fallow. So how you rotate the fields after you're done harvesting them. So it shows each zone right here on the left. RCP scenario on the right, 4.5, 8.5, and then your years, and then projected yield, ratio of future to baseline yield. And usually the baseline yields in these are like 1970 to 2010 or something like that. So you can see, you can kind of look at this chart and kind of predict like what kind of methods you use, how it's going to impact. If we look, we have a 1.4 max with an 8.5 RCP scenario and a crop fallow transition zone. So it's just interesting stuff. See how this is going to affect. But across the board, it's big. You don't really see too many decreases. This was a good visual showing the cumulative probability of yield change. So on the x-axis here, we have yield change percentage, and then the probability on the y-axis. So the higher the yield change percentage, the probability changes as well. And so this was winter wheat during 3 31-year time periods with 2 different RCP scenarios. It's a little hard to see. It's a little tiny. I'm sorry, but okay. This is a cool one too. I put a little handy arrow on here. So more yield at drier locations until 2080. Everything kind of tails off. We look at 2080, 2090. We see downward trends in a lot of these. I highlighted this dashed jobber here. That's Lind. It's a drier spot, and you can really see these gains in this 8.5 scenario winter wheat. Same with spring wheat. You see massive gains at times in these drier locations, where a wetter location like Moscow Mountain or Pullman, the yield's higher, but you don't see the increases there. So just another visual showing the projections based on different RCPs. One other thing at a macro level, looking at wheat harvest acres per county and kind of comparing it to the rest of the United States. And so if we look at the inland Northwest up here, we've got some red and some orange. That's increases. And these are on different climate scenarios. We have the IGSM policy scenario, the IGSM reference scenario, the MIROC policy, MIROC. I think the MIROCs tend to be a lot higher, like higher emissions scenarios, it seems like. It's just how farmers across the nation are going to adjust to this. And then this one, the last one here is different GCMs and their impact on the Pacific Northwest market share. Like, are they going to plant more wheat or less wheat? You'd think they'd plant more if their yields are increasing. I don't know. But if we look at wheat, no climate change, 13.3%. But under these different RCP scenarios, the highest one, we got 13.79, but they're kind of lower market share. And I don't know if that's because there's just more money in hay or something. Like, look at hay, you go way up. Maybe that's way productive for hay. I don't know, but that's where these losses are coming into the hay here, and I don't know what that means. But projected yields increase, but the market share and acreage totals are still kind of uncertain there. That's kind of what I gathered from that. So we look at our conclusions, what I want you to know, what I learned. I learned a lot. It was awesome. Climate change effects will increase generally the Pacific Inland Northwest yields. So increased CO2, increased temperature, leads to a longer growing season. So this is the deal with the winter and the spring wheat. Winter wheat, it's a higher yielding wheat. So you can plant it, you have more planting days. If it thaws earlier, you can plant that earlier, have that. And so you can maybe replace some of your spring crops with a winter crop with these changes. So farmers need to be aware of that. These increased atmospheric CO2 increases wheat biomass through TUE and evapotranspiration changes. So remember, the more carbon, the more the plants are going to grow faster, it's better. Drier locales will experience greater gains. This increase is going to kind of slow down after 2070. It gets kind of scary after that. And farmers, like I mentioned, may need to replace lower yielding spring crops with more productive winter crops based on the growing season length and all that stuff. Various scenarios across multiple research examples are in general agreement on projected yield gains, but acreage gains and losses seems to be more uncertain. So it was a really informative project to do. I learned a lot, but it seems like the wheat crops around here are going to be more productive and better. It's fine if we have extended periods of less water with a lot of heat, and we're still rolling coal. Seems like the wheat's going to do well. All right, thank you for listening to this, and thank you very much. Here's my bibliography. Thank you.